Welcome and thank you for joining me. I am Natasha L Brown, your host for The State of Healing, and this week we'll be talking about They Did Me Dirty. That is our topic, and it's basically how to overcome betrayal. So, as always, we want to go over our disclaimer. This is an informational session. I am not a medical professional. I'm a holistic coach. This broadcast is not a medical broadcast. It is to assist you in your holistic journey. And as always, we will direct you to professional therapists. Depending on what the situation is, we can assist you at New Peace Wellness if you're looking for a holistic routes, as well as a life coach. I have resources for life coaches as well. So just depending on what the resource is, keep in mind this is not a medical broadcast, informational and holistic only. So we use what you already have in your body to bring about healing. Our past few episodes have been about emotional healing, and you definitely have the tools within you for that. It works from your higher self, so your God self is where we're working from. But sometimes you do need more help, so we always turn back to therapy as well as the life coach, depending on what you're working on and what your goals are. So definitely, if you're needing some assistance, go ahead and put a comment in the comment section. If you have not subscribed yet to our channel, go ahead and do so by clicking the subscribe button and click on the notification button so that you'll know when we are going live and you can get the notification so that you won't miss any episodes. There are plenty of episodes where we were going live before. Over the past few years, I've posted most of those, still transforming and transitioning some of the other broadcasts as well. So make sure that you are getting caught up if you have not. So again, we are dealing with how to overcome betrayal. So what is betrayal? Looked up the definition. There were a couple of definitions. The one I like the most and the one that we will be dealing with is violation of a person's trust or confidence of a moral standard or etc. So anytime you are violated, especially emotionally, because it's not something that you can see, that you can put ointment on, that you can watch the healing process. When you are emotionally betrayed, when you are verbally betrayed, those things heal differently, and they take just as long to heal as a physical wound sometimes. And then sometimes, since we can't see it, we kind of mull it over and we don't let it go as quickly as we should. So I'm definitely going to give you some tips on how to let it go, how to overcome it, how to deal with it, and not just run over it and then something happen and it come back up again. So definitely we want to get through that. So again, with the betrayal, no matter what relationship it happened in, whether it was someone close or whether it was someone that you only had a few interactions with, and it may not hurt as much, but it does still hurt. So any type of betrayal. So definitely the first thing you want to do is name it what it is. It's betrayal. You've been violated in some way, your trust has been broken, your confidence has been broken, and you need to make sure you own it. Name it. What are you feeling at this time? Are you angry? Are you sad? Were you surprised by what happened? And many times, if you really evaluate and pay attention to who you are interacting with, it may not have even been a surprise. Was there fear from the situation, or do you fear since the situation has taken place, do you feel fear? And if you're in a position where you are in danger, definitely seek professional assistance from the police, making sure that you are getting the proper security that you need, as well as be mindful of what you are doing and where you are going. Also, do you feel disgust? Did it bring about an insecurity? Did it bring about a shame? Loneliness, confusion, all of those things. Name it for what it is. What is the particular betrayal brought about as far as your emotions are concerned? So what is it that you're feeling? And it's very important to acknowledge those feelings so you'll know how to work through them, because all of the feelings we just named, all of that has to do with betrayal. So what is it that you're feeling? And sometimes you may have to go through stages depending on what the betrayal was and who was the betrayer. Also, you want to resist retaliating, which human nature, when you're working from the lower nature, that's your first thought, your first instinct, if that's how you've been trained to definitely retaliate. But that's not something you want to do because it's not going to make you feel any better. And, saying it and feeling it are two different things. And many times you can think of ways that you can get back at the person, but it'll only be a minute gratification. It's not something that'll be long term because, again, you'll still have to evaluate what happened. You'll still have to evaluate yourself and what role you played in it, what part you played, and then you still have to be able to move forward. So definitely not, we don't want to retaliate, especially if it has something to do with physical retaliation. Take time away from the person, the place, or thing that betrayed you. Make sure you get away so that you can evaluate. Self-evaluation is always good, and we always talk about doing self-evaluation daily. Evaluate your day. What happened today that was productive and that you can keep doing? What happened today that was not productive and you need to work on and do something different on tomorrow? So definitely you want to be conscious of what's going on. So taking time away, especially if it was someone that was very close to you, separating yourself for a period of time so that you can get clarification on what took place and whether or not it's worth moving forward with that particular relationship. So it makes a big difference when you can step back and look at the situation with new eyes. Examine the betrayal. Many people will do hurtful things, so you want to sort through the reasons. You want to find out what really took place, whether maybe your perception of it is betrayal, but the person that is involved in the situation may not even see it that way. So definitely being open enough after you've taken some time to evaluate your role, your part, as well as what took place in general. Then you want to go back and you want to make sure that you find out, talk to the person. Especially if you're two mature adults, you should be able to talk it through and find out what's going on. So you want to be able to find out what took place so that it won't take place again. And find out what role you played so that you can correct yourself and not have this happen in another relationship. Because many times we'll get into relationships with different people, regardless of what type of relationship it is, and you find out that what will happen is you are the common denominator in every relationship. So if you don't self-evaluate and correct yourself, what's going to begin to happen is you're going to find out that you are in a cycle. And we talked about that last week in the State of Healing. So you can check that broadcast out. But knowing where you are and how to move forward productively is definitely what you want to do. So examine the betrayal and what took place. Also, you want to examine the relationship. Is the relationship worth saving? The betrayal may have come about because it's not a worthwhile relationship. Maybe that season is up on that relationship. That relationship has expired. And yes, relationships can have an expiration date. So finding out basically personally whether you care enough to move on with that relationship, regardless of what type of relationship it is. Do you need to be able to move on, or should you be willing to stay and work it out? Is the other person willing to work it out? Is the other person willing to acknowledge that there was some betrayal? So, all of that has to come into play. And again, this is more of an emotional type situation. So there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes. Being honest. Journaling is always good, especially if you're taking a step back and looking at the entire situation. Journaling what happened. Journaling how you feel. Journaling how it could have taken place differently. What you would have hoped would have happened. This will give you better dialogue when you come to sit down with the other person. Also, you want to make sure that you talk to a third party, just like we started off with. Therapy. Therapy is always good. Having a good accountability partner, someone you could just sit down with and talk through it. And many times as we talk through certain situations, we get the solution we need, which is always amazing. If we just talk about it. We talk it through. And sometimes you get into situations where people are not willing to listen and willing to communicate. So even though it may be one-sided, still sitting with someone that is a good listener, if not a professional therapist, that can just talk it through with you, or even just listen. Sometimes as you begin to talk it out, you work that situation out and you don't need any feedback. You know what you need to do. You know in what direction you need to go. So keep that in mind. Reflect on things. That journaling, making sure you write down what took place, summarizing what happened, the pros and the cons, finding out what you can do differently. What did you do that you've been doing long term in relationships and maybe it wasn't working, so it just came to a head, and you need to find out, self examine that particular situation and find out what it is that you need to tweak about you. And many times it has to do with us in particular. And like I said, some people don't even realize that anything took place. So as we are sitting down to talk to that person, they're like, well, I didn't mean it that way, or I didn't take it that way, or, so writing it down, talking it through, stepping back and looking at it differently, and just talking to the person and finding out what was really going on. What were they thinking about? Why did they do what they did? So what are the consequences, short term and long term? If you end the relationship, if you don't talk about it with that particular person, if you think it's just going to go away, it's not. So definitely getting those perspectives in order and making sure that you keep in mind what it is that you are looking for. What are your expectations? Unverbalized expectations cannot be met. So there's no way that you can assume that someone will meet the expectations in a relationship if you never voice what you want or what you need. And if you don't know what you want and need, then definitely those things cannot be fulfilled. Let's see. Speak to the person who betrayed you. And I keep saying that with each interaction, because at some point you do have to have a dialogue. You may not want to. It may not even be a relationship worth saving, but to understand what happened, if you can get that clarity, it will allow you to move forward freely. If you can't get that clarity, writing a letter, you don't have to send it, but definitely expressing yourself in the letter so that you can free yourself and move on. Forgiving that person so you can definitely move forward is always going to be key. So making sure that you are able to trust again, not necessarily the person that betrayed you, but being able to fully trust. And we've talked about that as well in one of our episodes. So it all plays a large part in who you are, making sure you're whole. Remember, this is holistic. This is helping you towards your holistic journey. So everything that we do is always going to be something that you are equipped to do. Whether you want to do it or not is definitely your choice, but you're equipped to do it. Cut ties with repeat offenders. And only you know what you can take, and only you know what you should be taking. And sometimes we put ourselves in positions where we allow people to do certain things and we don't want to move forward without them, but sometimes we're better off moving forward without them. And it's easier said than done. That's why we had all of the steps before, making sure that we wrote down what we were expecting, what we were wanting, what we were needing, what took place on our part, what took place on their part, how the situation could have played out differently from our perspective. All of that has a lot to do with us being able to move on. And if we are sticking in a relationship and the person continues the same thing over and over again, it is time for us to move on. And if we are not willing to move on, then we'll get stuck in a cycle of betrayal. And not just with that particular person, but it will go from person to person, because we'll be the one in the cycle. And we are everywhere we go, so that cycle is going to follow us. So if we are feeling betrayed, definitely deal with it quickly. Don't just sit and allow it to simmer. That's where the writing of the letters come in, writing it out and making sure that you're talking to someone so that it won't just linger. so that you're able to let it go, so that you're able to move forward and do what it's going to take in order to get there. So definitely some things that you want to do in order to move forward and not linger in the torment or the trauma of being betrayed. So you want to gain some perspective, and if you need to, like I said before, step back, but detach yourself from the situation so that you can see it clearly. Stand and look at it from another view. If it was someone that had come to you and talked to you about this particular situation, what advice would you give that person? And sometimes we give other people better advice because we see the whole picture and not just from our hurt vantage point. So stand back, look at the situation, and make sure that you can get your best view, so that you can make the proper decision. Don't indulge in the emotions, acknowledge them, but don't sit and linger in them. It's not productive. Make a plan for your emotional recovery, and that's where a therapist definitely will come in and play a large role, as well as that person that you are venting to. They're going to be able to say, well, it sounds like you may have did X, Y, and Z. So you want to keep in mind when you're discussing that, be open, especially if you're talking to someone that's going to hold you accountable. Feel the hole inside and grieve over it. So the best way to do that is to put something positive in that hole. Especially if you decided to move on from the relationship, something positive. You still have other friends that you can depend on, that you can count on, that you can trust. Fill it with time with those people. Counter self-pity by being of service to someone else. I am feeling bad. Why would I want to help someone else? But when we reach out of ourselves, out of our comfort zone, out of our hurt, out of our pain, and begin to help someone else, you will run into someone that's going through what is probably going to look worse than what your situation is. Now, if you're looking to compare wounds, then you'll definitely find it. But if you reach outside of yourself genuinely and help someone, you'll find that what you are looking for, as far as filling that hole, filling that void, healing, all of that will come with reaching out of yourself. So definitely don't get stuck in dwelling on those emotions. So no pity parties. Even if you have to linger for a little while, definitely you don't want to get into a place where you are feeling sorry for yourself. Again, self-evaluation. You want to find out what it is you need in order to move forward. So turning that pain and that drama into something positive, making it a learning tool so that you can help the next person. Because believe me, you're going to encounter someone that is going through or has gone through what you have gone through. They'll be able to help you, and then in turn, you'll be able to help someone else that may be in the current situation or that is about to go into that situation, and they'll remember how you handled the situation. So keep those things in mind. And again, our topic today was They Did Me Dirty, and we were dealing with how to overcome betrayal. It happens to the best of us. And definitely if it's someone that is close to us, it feels worse than what it probably is if it was someone we didn't care about. But it should be a learning lesson. Anything that we go through should be a learning lesson. Yes, that's easier said than done. But definitely after you get over the hurt and the pain, once you realize what you've learned from the situation, you can move forward. And again, you'll be able to help someone. So again, if you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. Click the notification button so you can get those notifications. I'm Natasha L Brown. We've been dealing with overcoming betrayal. And as always, remember that I love you and that self-love is your superpower. Thank you so much for joining me on The State of Healing, and I will see you again next week. Have a great week.